Good morning, students. Welcome to part 2 of Anatomy of Pharynx. And in this video lecture, we are going to discuss about muscles of pharynx exclusively. And along with it, we will discuss about the arterial supply, venous drainage, nerve supply, and lymphatics of pharynx, along with its clinical anatomy. So let's start with it. So muscles of pharynx, when you have studied in the previous video lecture about the structure of pharynx, then in that we had already seen the muscular coat, or we have already discussed about the muscular coat of the pharynx. So that muscular coat of the pharynx has an outer circular layer made up of the three constrictors. Yes, you remember it, that the muscular coat of the pharynx has an outer circular layer of muscles that are called as constrictors, and the inner longitudinal layers of muscle that is also three in number, and they are the stylopharyngeus, the salpingopharyngeus, and the palatopharyngeus. So talking about muscles of pharynx, you can classify muscles of pharynx in two heads: the constrictors and the longitudinal muscles. There are three constrictors: the superior constrictor, the middle constrictor, and the inferior constrictor. And there are three longitudinal muscles also: the stylopharyngeus, the salpingopharyngeus, and the palatopharyngeus. Now talking about origin of constrictors of pharynx. So origin of the superior constrictor. If we go with the origin of superior constrictor, you can trace in this figure. So the superior constrictor takes origin. I will define the origin from above downwards. From above downwards. So from above downwards, the first origin point of this superior constrictor is the pterygoid hamulus. This is the pterygoid hamulus. Pterygoid bone में this point, this is the hamulus of pterygoid bone. So this pterygoid hamulus is the first point of origin of superior constrictor. Then this pterygomandibular raphe joining the pterygoid plate and the mandible is a raphe called as pterygomandibular raphe. So this pterygomandibular raphe is the second point of origin of superior constrictor. Then superior constrictor has the medial surface of mandible as an point of origin, So from the medial surface of mandible, superior constrictor originates. And last but not the least, from the side of the posterior part of the tongue, this superior constrictor will take its origin. So origin of superior constrictor is from four structures or four anatomical points: the pterygoid hamulus, then we have the pterygomandibular raphe, then we have medial surface of the mandible, and last but not the least, we will have the side of the posterior uh, part of the tongue. Now talking about origin of middle constrictor, so now you can trace in the figure. The middle constrictor takes origination from the lower part of the stylohyoid ligament. Yes, this is the stylohyoid ligament joining the styloid process of the base of skull, from the base of the skull, styloid process on the base of the skull to the hyoid bone. So this is stylohyoid ligament. From the lower part of this stylohyoid ligament, the middle constrictor originates, and from the hyoid bone also it takes origination, and within hyoid bone it originates from the lesser cornua, as well as the upper border of the greater cornua. So both from the lesser cornua and the upper cornu, this middle constrictor originates. Now talking about the inferior constrictor. So inferior constrictor has two parts. The first or the upper part is the thyropharyngeal part. Okay, the thyropharyngeus, also known as the thyropharyngeus muscle. So this thyropharyngeal part is the upper part of the inferior constrictor, and the lower part is called as cricopharyngeal part of the inferior constrictor or cricopharyngeus muscle. So you can trace the origin point of this thyropharyngeus or thyropharyngeal part of the inferior constrictor very easily, that it is originating from the thyroid cartilage. Okay, so the you can see there is this oblique line from of the on the thyroid cartilage, and from this oblique line the thyropharyngeus will originate, and the cricopharyngeus will originate from the cricoid cartilage. Okay, the cricopharyngeus will originate from the cricoid cartilage. Okay, so uh, the origin point of the inferior constrictor will have two different origin points, or inferior constrictor will have two different origin points. The first part, that is the thyropharyngeus or the thyropharyngeal part, originates from the oblique line on the thyroid cartilage, and the cricopharyngeal part of the muscle or the cricopharyngeus will arise from the cricoid cartilage. Now talking about insertion of these three constrictors of pharynx, so you can see this is the posterior, this is behind the pharynx, so this is the posterior side or posterior wall of the pharynx, and all the constrictors, all the three constrictors, the superior constrictor, the middle constrictor, and the inferior constrictor will be inserted into a raphe which is situated on the midline. Yes, you can trace this raphe which is situated on the midline, and that is called as pharyngeal raphe. So on this pharyngeal raphe, all the three constrictors will be inserted on the posterior wall of the pharynx. This is the posterior wall of the pharynx. The upper end of this raphe, as you can see in this figure, the upper end of this raphe will be attached to the pharyngeal tubercle. This is the pharyngeal tubercle which is situated at the basilar part of the occipital bone. This is the occiput. So this occiput, this is the basilar part of the occipital bone, and from this basilar part of the occipital bone there is a tubercle known as, at the midpoint or the midline, known as pharyngeal tubercle, and on this pharyngeal tubercle the upper part of the pharyngeal raphe get attached. Okay, now this, so in order to define insertion of constrictors, you just have to write that all the constrictors will be inserted on the pharyngeal raphe which is situated on the midline and is attached to the pharyngeal tubercle at the basilar part of the occipital bone. Okay, fine. Now talking about longitudinal muscles of the pharynx, so there are three longitudinal muscles of the pharynx. The first one is the stylopharyngeus, the second one is the salpingopharyngeus, and the third one is the palatopharyngeus. Now you can see in this figure and define the origin and insertion of all these three muscles very easily. This is the styloid process, yes, and you can trace that the stylopharyngeus will originate from the styloid process and is running downwards in between or passing downwards in between the superior and the middle constrictor. This is the superior constrictor, this is the middle constrictor, and this is the inferior constrictor. So in between the superior and the middle constrictor, this stylopharyngeus, which is originated from the styloid process, is running downwards and will be adhered, will run downwards towards the inner surface of this middle and the middle as well as the inferior constrictor muscle. So interior to this middle and inferior constrictor muscle, it will run downwards and attaches to the thyroid cartilage. Now talking about the second muscle, that is the salpingopharyngeus. So you can trace here the salpingopharyngeus descends from the auditory tube. Okay, it is originating near the auditory tube and it descends from the auditory tube and merges to the insertion of palatopharyngeus or inserted near the palatopharyngeus on the thyroid cartilage. Now talking about palatopharyngeus, as the name itself suggests, palato, it is originating from the palate. So from the sides of the palate, from the fibers of this palatopharyngeus muscle originates from the side of this palate. The muscle, the levator velli palatini, forming the palatine fascia. So this from this originates the fibers of this palatopharyngeus muscle, which is inserted on the thyroid cartilage. So these are the three longitudinal muscles of pharynx, which is forming the internal layer, internal muscle coat of the pharynx or the wall of the pharynx. Now there are some structures in between these pharyngeal muscles. So basically we will define the structures in between the constrictors. The constrictors are the main or the most important muscles of pharynx. The longitudinal muscles are also there, but we consider the most important structural the most important structure of this pharyngeal wall are the three constrictors only, and these three constrictors have some structures present in between the gaps or in between among the gaps, among their gaps. Okay, so among uh, them there are certain structures which resides in between the gaps of these constrictors. So talking about, first of all, you can imagine this is the base where I'm moving my cursor, where it is labeled as midline. So this midline, this is the midline, this is the midline, this is the pharyngeal raphe. You can consider this as pharyngeal raphe, and here you can consider it as pharyngeal tubercle, and this is the base of the skull. So in between the base of the skull and the superior constrictor, this is the largest gap. Yes, you can see this is the largest gap. The large gap between the base of the skull and the superior constrictor, this largest gap is called as the sinus of Morgagni. This is the sinus of Morgagni where I am moving my cursor right now. So this sinus of Morgagni has some structures passing through it or within it. The structures passing through this gap are the auditory tube. The auditory tube you can trace here. Yes, the auditory tube, the levator velli palatini muscle, the levator velli palatini muscle, and the ascending palatine artery. So in between the upper border of this superior constrictor and the base of the skull, there is a large gap which is called as sinus of Morgagni, and in this sinus of Morgagni, three structures, that is the auditory tube, the levator velli palatini, and the ascending palatine artery is there or resides there. Now in between the superior constrictor and the middle constrictor, this is the superior constrictor and this is the middle constrictor. So in between the superior constrictor and the middle constrictor, the two important structures passes in between the superior constrictor and the middle constrictor. There one muscle and there is one nerve. So this muscle, which is called as stylopharyngeus, we have already discussed about stylopharyngeus. So stylopharyngeus muscle, which attaches to the styloid, from the styloid process to the thyroid cartilage. So stylopharyngeus, the longitudinal muscle, is passing in between the superior constrictor and the middle constrictor, and the nerve, the glossopharyngeal nerve, the ninth cranial nerve called as glossopharyngeal nerve, it also passes in between the superior constrictor and the middle constrictor. Now talking about the gap between the middle constrictor and the inferior constrictor. So in between the middle constrictor and the inferior constrictor, the internal laryngeal nerve and the superior laryngeal vessels, the superior laryngeal artery and vein, the superior laryngeal vessels will reside between the middle and the inferior constrictor. So in between the middle and the inferior constrictor, we have three structures. Two are the vessels, the superior laryngeal vessels, that is the artery, one artery and one vein, the superior laryngeal artery and the superior laryngeal vein, and there is one nerve, that is the internal laryngeal nerve. And in between the inferior constrictor and the esophagus, here you can imagine, here it is esophagus, And in between the inferior constrictor and the esophagus, we also have a uh, mm, vessels, the artery and the vein, that is the inferior laryngeal artery and vein, and one nerve, that is the recurrent laryngeal nerve. So there is recurrent laryngeal nerve and inferior laryngeal artery and vein in between the inferior constrictor and the esophagus. So these are the structures which are present in between the pharyngeal muscles, basically in between the constrictors of the pharynx. Now, sometimes in 2 marks question, there is a dehiscence, or there is a point, there is a region, weak region, which comes very frequently in question paper, that is the Killian's dehiscence. What is Killian's dehiscence? This is the anterior wall of the pharynx and this is the posterior wall of the pharynx. Now in this posterior wall of the pharynx, this is the inferior pharyngeal constrictor muscle. Okay, the inferior constrictor, basically this is the thyropharyngeus and this is the cricopharyngeus. This is also inferior constrictor and this is also inferior constrictor. This is the upper part of the inferior constrictor known as the thyropharyngeus, and this is the lower part of the inferior constrictor known as cricopharyngeus muscle. So the lower part of this thyropharyngeus muscle, in between the lower part of this thyropharyngeus muscle and the cricopharyngeus muscle, there is a small triangular area in which there is only single sheet of muscle. There is only single sheet of muscle, and there is no overlapping of any upper or middle constrictor. So कोई भी constrictor, there is no constrictor which is overlapping this region. कोई भी constrictor इस region को overlap नहीं करता, और एक छोटा सा triangular area जहाँ पे एक single sheet of muscle है in between the two parts of the inferior constrictor muscle. This triangular area is called as this weak part, or this is basically at the level of the cricoid cartilage, or you can see at the level of basically the cricoid lamella. So at the level of the cricoid lamella, this weak point is known as Killian's dehiscence. This point, this Killian dehiscence, has a clinical importance, which I will discuss in the last slide of this video lecture. That is the pharyngeal diverticulum. What is pharyngeal diverticula? We will discuss in forthcoming slide. But remembering this point, so this point, this Killian dehiscence, has clinical importance, and the pharyngeal diverticula will be formed in this region or in this weak area only. Now, nerve supply of the pharynx. So pharynx, the nerve supply of pharynx will be divided or classified into the motor nerve supply, the motor fibers, the sensory fibers, as well as the taste, the taste sensations, which is included in the sensory fibers, and the parasympathetic nerve fibers. So motor, first of all, the most important plexus or the nerve which supplies the area of pharynx, or which supplies the muscles of the pharynx or the pharynx, is the pharyngeal plexus. The pharyngeal plexus of nerves is derived from the three nerves. Okay, it derives from three different nerves. The first is the pharyngeal branch of the vagus. The pharyngeal branch of the vagus, that is the 10th cranial nerve. Then we have the accessory nerve, pharyngeal branch of the accessory nerve, okay, which is embedded, or which is through the vagus, which is through the carrying this vagus, the pharyngeal branch of the vagus carry the pharyngeal nerve fibers from the pharyngeal branch of this cranial accessory nerve. And the third is the glossopharyngeal nerve, the ninth one. So the ninth, 10th and 11th cranial nerve will give nerve fibers to form this pharyngeal plexus, and this pharyngeal plexus basically lies chiefly on this middle constrictor. So this is the middle constrictor muscle. On chiefly on or superior to this middle constrictor, there is a plexus of nerve termed as pharyngeal plexus, which derives nerve fibers from the ninth, the glossopharyngeal nerve, 10th, the vagus, and the 11th, the accessory cranial accessory nerve. Okay, so these nerves will give nerve supply. Basically, the motor nerve supply will be given through this pharyngeal plexus. Motor nerve supply meaning that all the muscles of the pharynx will be supplied by these pharyngeal plexus, especially by the branches of the vagus, especially by the branches of the vagus and the cranial accessory nerve, and all the muscles of the pharynx will be supplied with it except the stylopharyngeus muscle. The stylopharyngeus is not supplied by this pharyngeal branch of the vagus carrying the nerve fibers of also of the pharyngeal branch of from the cranial accessory. The stylopharyngeus will be supplied by the ninth cranial nerve, that is the glossopharyngeal. So the motor supply will be through the pharyngeal branch of the 10th cranial nerve, the pharyngeal branch of the 11th cranial nerve, and the chiefly and only one muscle, that is the stylopharyngeus, will be supplied from the glossopharyngeal nerve. Now talking about the sensory fibers, so the sensory fibers or general viscera afferent nerve fibers will be originated from this ninth cranial nerve, that is the glossopharyngeal nerve, and partly sometimes from the vagus too, the 10th cranial nerve, that is the vagus. And the taste sensation from the vallicula or the epiglottic region, the taste sensation, talking about the taste sensation, so taste sensation will be through the internal laryngeal branch of this vagus. This is the vagus now, and internal laryngeal branch of this vagus, this is the internal laryngeal branch of the vagus. Trace, you can trace it, this is the internal laryngeal branch of the vagus, this one, okay, yani this one. My cursor is not moving correctly. Try to move it slowly. Yes, I'm tracing the internal laryngeal nerve. So this is the internal laryngeal nerve, which is a branch of the vagus, which carries taste sensation from this epiglottic region. Now, the parasympathetic nerve fibers or the secretomotor nerve fibers will derive from the greater petrosal nerve, which is not here, and this greater petrosal nerve is the branch of the facial nerve, which is not mentioned or labeled in this figure. And from apart from that, it also has the nerve supply, the parasympathetic nerve fibers from the lesser palatine branches of the pterygopalatine ganglion, which is also not labeled here. So the parasympathetic nerve supply is not labeled here. Here in this figure, you can only trace the secretomotor nerve supply of the pharynx. Now, talking about arterial supply of the pharynx. So, in pharynx, basically there will be four arteries, chiefly four arteries that will supply arterial blood to the pharynx. The first one is the ascending pharyngeal artery. This is the ascending pharyngeal artery. You can trace it. This is the ascending pharyngeal artery. Yes, which is a direct branch of internal carotid artery. So it is ascending pharyngeal branch of the external carotid artery. Okay, then we have the tonsillar branch and the ascending palatine branch. The ascending palatine artery, this is the ascending palatine artery, this is the tonsillar artery. So the tonsillar branch and the ascending palatine branch of this facial artery will be the second artery which supplies arterial blood to the pharynx. The third one will be the dorsal lingual branch of this lingual artery. Okay, the dorsal lingual branch of this lingual artery that will supply the pharynx. And the last but not the least are the branches from the maxillary artery, that is the pharyngeal branches and the greater pharyngeal branches. You can say the greater palatine branches, pharyngeal branches, and the pterygoid branches of this maxillary artery, which will supply the arterial blood to the pharynx. Okay. Talking about venous drainage of pharynx, so the venous blood will be drained into the plexus, which is formed on the posterior wall of the pharynx. You can trace in this figure, this is the posterior wall of the pharynx, and on this posterior wall there is a plexus of veins which is called as pharyngeal plexus, and within this pharyngeal plexus the venous drainage from the pharynx will finally drain, and this this pharyngeal plexus or this venous plexus will drain the venous blood of the pharynx into the facial vein and the internal jugular vein. Okay, so this venous plexus will drain its venous blood into the facial vein and the internal jugular vein. Lymphatics of the pharynx. So lymphatic drainage will be basically into the retropharyngeal lymph nodes, that is on the posterior wall of the lymph nodes. The retropharyngeal means back to the pharynx or posterior to the pharynx, and the deep cervical lymph nodes. Okay, so these are the deep cervical lymph nodes, these are the retropharyngeal lymph nodes, and within these two lymph nodes, all the lymph from the pharynx will drain. Now, last but not the least are some clinical terms related to pharynx as well as tonsils. So, the first one is the tonsillitis, very common term, very common clinical condition which we observe in day-to-day OPDs and is very common in children. Tonsils are frequent site of infection, especially in children. बच्चों में बहुत commonly tonsils easily inflamed हो जाते हैं, and inflammation of tonsils is termed as tonsillitis. And this tonsillitis sometimes also causes referred pain in the ear, because glossopharyngeal nerve, as we have already discussed previously, that glossopharyngeal nerve supplies both the areas, the ear as well as the pharynx or the tonsils or the fosses. So due to the common nerve supply, sometimes the pain due to tonsillitis will be referred within the ears. And tonsillitis is nothing but the inflammation of the tonsils due to some infections. And in children, this infection may surround to the surrounding tissues. And if this infection the infection due to tonsillitis or the infections causing tonsillitis, if it basically spreads into the surrounding tissues, then it will form a peritonsillar abscess or the quinsy. The quinsy or the peritonsillar abscess is nothing but the suppuration. You can trace here, you can see the suppuration. Suppuration matlab pus formation. Suppuration means pus formation. So suppuration in the peritonsillar area is termed as quinsy, or suppuration in the peritonsillar area is also termed as peritonsillar abscess. Sometimes a closed abscess, a closed sac filled of pus is there, or an abscess is there, which is termed as peritonsillar abscess. So peritonsillar abscess or quinsy is the synonymous clinical term which can be used synonymously. Okay, so if tonsillitis or if the infection of due to tonsillitis, or if the infection causing tonsillitis is spreading in the surrounding peritonsillar area and causing pus formation or abscess formation, then it will be termed as quinsy. Now, what is tonsillectomy? So the enlarged or infected tonsils, as you can see in this figure, suppose if there is where the tonsils are very much enlarged, so there is a problem in difficulty in swallowing of food or liquid. So difficulty in swallowing is termed as dysphagia, and there may be a very high grade of dysphagia. So to get rid of that dysphagia, there is an operation or surgical intervention in which we will remove the infected tonsils. Okay, so complete removal of the infected or enlarged tonsils is called as tonsillectomy. Okay, so tonsillectomy basically is usually done by the Galatoin method, which is not here, which is not demonstrated here. So Galatoin method से generally tonsillitis जो है वो perform किया जाता है, and basically uh, sometimes hemorrhage after tonsillectomy is checked by removal of clot from the raw tonsillar bed. So if there is any raw tonsillar bed after the removal of these tonsils, there will be a raw tonsillar bed, and there will be hemorrhage, there will be heavy hemorrhage from that raw tonsillar bed. So removing any clot will lead to more bleeding or hemorrhage into from this raw tonsillar bed. That means after removing the tonsils, अगर tonsillectomy कर दिया perform, तो यहाँ जो bed है, tonsil beds मैं अपन ने पढ़ा था, define किया था. So that tonsil bed will become raw, मतलब ऐसा area जहाँ से bleeding हो सकता है, वहाँ से bleeding होगा. And ऑटोमेटिकली क्लॉट फॉर्मेशन होता है, ब्लड फिजियोलॉजी में पढ़ा होगा आप लोगों ने. सो द क्लॉट फॉर्मेशन विल चेक दैट hemorrhage, and if you will remove that clot, or if the surgeon or the physician will remove that clot, then there will be heavy bleeding or heavy hemorrhage from that raw tonsil pit. And yes, last but not the least is the pharyngeal diverticula. So we have already discussed about Killian's dehiscence, and the this pharyngeal diverticula are formed basically from the outpouching of this dehiscence. The Killian's dehiscence will be outpouched from due to the weak wall. This dehiscence will be outpouched, and it may contain food, it may contain water. So this is called as pharyngeal diverticulum or Zenker's diverticulum. Okay, and this such diverticula are not normal in human beings. They are normal in pigs, but they are not norm. Some animals में ये normal होता है, जैसे pigs की बात करें. But in human beings, this diverticula is not normal, and these diverticula are formed basically due to the incoordination of the neuromuscular junction, or the incoordination of the neuromuscular incoordination in this Killian's dehiscence region, and due to which there will be this diverticular formation, and sometimes food or sometimes water will be pushed back within this diverticula, or forming this diverticula. The basic reason of formation of this diverticula is that this cricopharyngeus muscle has the sphincteric function. Cricopharyngeus act like a sphincter, whereas the thyropharyngeus muscle, this is propulsive in nature. So the thyropharyngeus muscle and yes, the thyropharyngeus muscle have different nerve supply. The cricopharyngeus muscle have different nerve supply. So sometimes the thyropharyngeus muscle, there is no neuromuscular incoordination in the thyropharyngeus muscle, but there is some neuromuscular incoordination in the cricopharyngeus muscle, leading to this more constricted feeling, or leading to the more tight feeling, tight banding of this cricopharyngeus muscle, and due to which the food or the water will be pushed back and tends to produce this Zenker's diverticulum within the Killian's dehiscence. So this is all about pharynx as well as tonsils, and we will discuss nose and nasal cavity in our coming video lectures. Till then, stay home, stay healthy, take care. Thank you so much.